So what is going on in AEW right now? I mean, a lot has happened since this Saturday, and it just keeps getting worse. But to understand it, I feel like we have to go back, and I feel like the full picture needs to be shared. So we need to go back to the Go Home program between Adam Page and Punk, where Punk was challenging Page for the title, and then they had the match that Saturday, I believe. And so what ended up happening was Page went off script and started making comments to Punk that were not scripted, and Punk took serious issue with that. There were reports after the fact that he was saying he was never going to put over Page, that he was going to walk out of the company, and that left a really weird, bittersweet feeling with a lot of wrestling fans, like what the heck is going on. And a lot of fans are wondering just what exactly is going on. Okay, well, let's fast forward to Punk winning the belt from Page, and then he injured his foot shortly after, to which he had to go away for a little while to get his foot surgically repaired. He ends up coming back, and then the following show, he opens up his segment calling out Page, which he was not supposed to do. It was not in the script. He did it knowing full well Page was not there, nor that he was going to come out and do it. And this is where I feel like a lot of what was going on was finally coming to light. Okay, so let's just block that right there. So what is going on? So Punk was mad at Page for his shoot comments that he had made when they were on the live Go Home show going into their title match. And here's the thing, unless you're someone who is savvy to the behind the scenes in the wrestling world and what's going on and who's friends with who, no one's really going to know what he was talking about. And I'd almost say that is a positive. And Alvarez made a really good point on this. He would later go on to say that Alvarez went on to say, because he was talking about the media scrum after his last match with Moxley, which I'll get to in a minute, and talking about how no one knew what Page was referring to in that initial shoot segment where he was saying how you stand up for workers' rights and X, Y, and Z, and you're not here for the company, you're here for yourself, stuff like that. What he was referring to was Colt Cabana. And for those of you who don't know, Punk and Colt were friends. And they were friends right up until about 2014 when they decided to file charges against WWE. And things started going south. I remember back then it was reported that from one source that Punk was not taking care of the legal fees, which I'll touch in a little bit. But it's safe to say that they haven't been friends or talking since. So Page being friends with the executive vice presidents or the elites, the Bucks and Omega, and Colt also being their friend, I'm guessing he drew a weird comparison, this is your friend, and you got him removed from AEW, you stand for workers' rights, yet where's Colt? Oh, he's on Ring of Honor, he's not an AEW, what's AEW? ANW. A root beer float would sound amazing compared to all this drama. But I had to talk about it, it's so weird. It's very reminiscent of late 90s Click in WWF, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So, yeah, apparently this all came down to him standing up for Colt Cabana and how Page went out there, went into business for himself, was making comments in regards to Colt, to Punk, in which he shouldn't have, and then to make it even worse, the Young Bucks apparently were on social media doing the exact same thing, and they were throwing Punk under the bus, basically saying that, he's getting people fired and using his position to railroad, or not railroad, but like throw people under the bus. And I gotta be honest, for executive vice presidents, that's not exactly the best way to be handling your business. So, moving on. So, that's that block. And then people are mad at Punk for calling out Page when he wasn't, and Punk acknowledged that he shouldn't have done that. That was the low road, but he was pissed off. The other point Alvarez was making was like when Page was shooting with Punk, no one knew what he was talking about. Nobody would know unless you were like a friend of them. And when Punk did what he did, he directly called out Page, and everyone knew what he was doing. So I guess if we want to sit here and compare, do an apples and apples comparison to what's going to happen later, yeah, I will say that when Punk did it, that was directly going into business for himself, but it was also a receipt. And in the wrestling business, a receipt can be anything. If you stiff shot someone, they stiff shot you right back. And that's their way of basically telling you, that one, this is the receipt for what you cashed in earlier. I mean, I love hearing stories about that. Now, not all, some receipts are far more vicious than, the accident in hand. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch. I think it was Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman's first title match. Braun caught Lesnar pretty hard on the side of the head with his knee, and then Brock returned the favor with a very stiff shot to this side of Braun's head. So yeah, I guess this is the receipt to that, and I can understand Alvarez's comparison. It's like when Page did it, no one knew what he was talking about. He was very very ambiguous, very almost not really anonymous, but very cryptic. Punk, it was very blatant to see what he was doing. So I call that, I don't necessarily call that a wash, because this is supposed to be, it's basically Punk just getting one back on Page, and this is what I believe is going to be part of the much bigger problem in AEW. So then we fast forward to Moxley and Punk. Their first match, Moxley throws a kick. He ends up hurting his planted foot, not the foot he threw the kick with. He goes down. They do a segment a week or so later. Ace Steel comes out, pumps him up, slaps him in the face. He's like, "No, you need to get up and fight." And it was just like a big go home crowd at Chicago. And Punk, they did the rematch, and Punk ended up winning. And then then there's the big media scrum, which I'm not going to get into in length. I recommend going and listen to it yourself. I think it's about 22 minutes in total, so it's really not a lot. A lot was definitely said, but yeah. So, basically in this interview, Punk kept referring to the EVPs. And for those of you who don't know, in that company, the executive vice presidents. The executive vice presidents are the people who helped get that company started. And those EVPs also include the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. And he was talking about how these guys who don't know how to manage even a target are out here running their mouth about things they know nothing about people who I have no say with, no say in, have nothing to do with them being on TV or not, are now going on social media or to reporters and telling them that I am the reason why they're no longer on TV, or why people like Paige, and I'm jumping around here, and why people like Paige feel the need to have to go into business for themselves in order to stick up for their friends, when I did absolutely nothing. And like, Punk was visibly pissed off. Visibly, like, he was pissed. He was super pissed off. So he talked about MJF a little bit, because he made his return at All Out, and it kept going back to Paige. It kept going back to the Bucks. So there's a lot of hostility just from that alone. Again, I'm not going to get into it. It's a lot to get into, but this I can tell is from personal experience. This is what happens. This is what happens when you get someone who is just sick and tired of the drama and they want it to stop. They want it to stop. They're tired of the behind the scenes chitter chatter and all that. So I'm gonna end that part there. Now here's where it gets nuts. That night, it has been reported. Now this has all been reported. A lot of this is still alleged, and we are still seeing the fallout. Ooh, excuse me. That coffee's hitting back. And we're still waiting to hear official comments, and this is as of 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 7th of September. The Young Bucks and Omega went into Punk's locker room after this press release. There was a confrontation. Reports are that Punk allegedly threw the first punch. Punk's friend Ace Steel threw a chair at the other Buck. I think Punk hit Matt Jackson. Ace threw a chair and hit Nick, knocked him out. That is also another alleged point that's being brought up. And Ace Steel also allegedly bit and pulled the hair of Kenny Omega, which I laugh a little bit at that because it just sounds really childish. They eventually got security in there to break everyone up. And as of right now, so far, it looks like the Trios champions are suspended. At least the Bucks are. And we're still waiting to hear what's going to happen to Punk and Ace Steel. Now, apparently there was a meeting yesterday with Khan where they were talking about even a possible exit from the company. So this is pretty serious. Now, I'm not just going to stop right there. Now, this is where I'm going to start putting in my 2 cents. Okay. There's a lot to dissect here, so I'm just going to start from the beginning. First and foremost, if you are the company champion and you are slated to lose that belt because that is truly what is best for the business, then understand that this is wrestling. This is not your show. This is what you signed up for. And it's not to say that Paige was not a bad champion, but again, look at the numbers. Look at what kind of numbers Punk pulls in. The viewership, the attendance, the pay-per-view buys, it all goes up. Punk is a widely recognized name, whereas guys like Paige and the Elite and, they're good. I'm not taking that away from them, but let's be honest here. I mean, a lot of people still don't know who these guys are. Everyone knows who CM Punk is. I mean, for crying out loud, he was on the cover of video games. And AEW is still trying to get their first video game out, which does look good. I'm interested in trying it. It looks like No Mercy. If they remade No Mercy in 2022. Anyway, so for Paige to go into business for himself because he felt like he needed to stick up for Colt Cabana, and it's like, seriously, dude? That's nothing you could have done behind the scenes? So to me, it's like, that I almost want to say that warrants the reaction or the response that that Punk gave when he came back after his injury, where he called out Paige knowing Paige would not be there and then basically buried him in his own town. It's like, yeah, dude, you're basically accusing this dude of borderline life ruination almost. You're saying that this dude is responsible for having people lose their jobs and their financial well-being. I'm like, that's messed up. Punk just went out there and buried the guy saying, yeah, that's not cowboy stuff, that's coward stuff. And it's like, yeah, dude, because with all due respect, Paige going out there and doing shoot promos against arguably one of the best made absolutely no sense. And Punk going out there and doing it, if I'm being fair, he shouldn't have done that either. But I'm almost willing to give him the pass on it because, again, this is the world of wrestling and there are receipts for unchecked actions. And then there's all the behind the scenes stuff where running their mouth. Now again, this is all alleged, and I'm not there to comment on stuff I have not seen. I do know that the Bucks have in fact made comments on social media regarding Punk and how, he's not, he's using his influence to basically affect people's livelihoods with zero proof of it whatsoever. And honestly, for anything else, like, these are supposed to be the EVPs of your company, and they're basically calling out your top champion and accusing him of influencing the CEO of your company to effectively move people to another portion of a different part of your sister roster, and nothing goes checked. Like, I love it how everyone's so quick to defend the Young Bucks and all this, and it's like, I'm not trying to pass blame, but can we at least call it for what it is? It just... And then we get to the media scrum, and everyone's saying, well, Punk went off. He was way out of line. He shouldn't have said what he said. You know what? I say this. I say again, this is clearly a guy who's sick and tired of playing behind the, locker room or behind the scene politics, and he's sick and tired of people who are supposed to be executive vice presidents of this company acting like a bunch of children, going behind the scenes telling people in the locker room and on the internet and reporters about Punk is getting all his people he doesn't like fired, and he's not. And again, executive vice presidents, people who have a stake in this company, for the better well-being of this company. This is stuff catty coworkers do when they want to try to get rid of someone at their job they don't like. So, that's what I will comment on. Should Punk have gone out there and said what he said? No. This is clearly a guy who was just sick and tired of he's just sick and tired of a lot of the BS. Should he have been penalized from that? No, because and I also say this too, like, they do these media scrums, and I hate to break it to you, but they want to make it feel like it's raw and unfiltered. That's on them. He didn't go out there and directly name names. He just kept referring to them as EVPs, but the only one he referred to by name was Paige. And in all honesty, like, knowing what I know now, I honestly feel like he should have tried to hold it back just a little bit for the sake of putting people in the place they deserve. I've always been someone who said, like, the worst thing that you can do as a victim of dealing with miserable coworkers is don't allow them to get the last laugh on you. Like, let them dig their own hole, or grave rather. And that's what he should have done. But at that point, he's like, no, I am one of the top draws at this company. They are not. People know them. More people know me. I am the champion of this company. They are not. And if they're okay with their buddy who has not been reprimanded for going out and shooting on me, this is your face champion, unchecked, then yeah, I have a problem with you. So the argument can also be made that Paige was getting special treatment because of who his friends are. And, oh my goodness. Then we get into the confrontation in the locker room after the media scrum. Now, this is all alleged. There is no video proof of what happened. There are some people that are being investigated. There are people who are suspended. But here are the constants, and I will talk about them one at a time. Number one, Omega and the Bucks went into Punk's locker room. That is a constant. That has not changed. That seems to be a popular allegation. So what you're telling me is that the people who are the EVPs of the company decided they were going to confront your champion in his locker room. Yeah, that sounds professional. Now, people argue, well, he said what he said about Paige and the other guys. I'm like, to my knowledge, he didn't refer to any of the other ones by name. He might have said something about Omega, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. And if he did, it was very quick. But he didn't refer to anyone else by name. So keep in mind, these are three guys who were supposed to be EVPs for the company, or at least the Jackson brothers. deciding to confront the main champion of your company in his locker room. I'm sorry, were you expecting people to just be like people looking at this and be like, I don't see what the big deal is. I'm like, 3 people went into his locker room to discuss. I'm sorry, like I'm not a wrestler, but I've spoken to people who have been in wrestling. I've heard stories of people who have been in the wrestling business for many years, and all of them say the same thing. If usually a group or one person walks into your locker room, there's fists are more likely going to fly. So I say again, people who have an actual stake in this company decided the best course of action was to personally confront the champion, the main champion of their company, in his locker room. They didn't decide to go to Tony Khan, first of all, the CEO, and say, we need to talk about this. We need to sit down. We need to deal with this. No, they just decided to take matters in their own hands. So I'm also someone who has dealt with a lot of narcissistic people in my life, and that to me feels like a Punk move on their part. And I want not CM Punk. I mean them using the numbers game to their advantage and then turning around and saying, oh, we weren't trying to do anything. I'm like, no, I have a feeling what they were attempting to do. And the reason why I'm starting to get a little hot about them, again, I'm not there, I don't know what happened, is because anytime I have ever been in a situation where I have had to confront people, and either I had people with me or they had people with them, there was a reason for it, and it was never a good one. That is an intimidation tactic. They were thinking it was going to be a 3-on-1 confrontation. I guarantee you, they walked in there saying, like, "What do you think you're doing?" And as far as the physical part of it, this is where I'm gonna be like, listen, Punk was wrong for throwing fists. Unless it comes out that someone hit him first, I'm sorry, Punk threw the first punch. And there should be punishments for that. You don't put other people you work with in actual physical jeopardy. Like, it's wrestling. You're supposed to be taking care of each other out there. This is behind the scenes drama, and now they're throwing live rounds. It's insane. So there should be punishment for that. There should also be punishment, definitely, for Ace Steel for if he did throw a chair. I don't care if you're breaking up a fight or not. There's a difference between throwing a punch and throwing a chair. A chair can crack your skull wide open. A punch is a lot more manageable than having someone throw a chair at you. Now, I don't know what kind of chair they're talking about. We talking like one of them rinky-dink breakaway chairs they use for props, or like an actual chair, or like one of those old wooden chairs? Like, what kind of chair are we talking here? Did he pick up a recliner and throw it at him? I don't know. So as of now, this is where we're at. There are going to be suspensions, and there's even possibility of Punk exiting the company. And I'll do a follow-up on that if something drastic like that does happen. But I can honestly say right now, AEW has some serious problems. They need to get their house in order. They got people who want out. They have a bloated roster right now. They need to seriously start doing some work. And for anyone who's more of a wrestling fan than I say this as someone who enjoys wrestling. If it's good, it's good. I don't care where it comes from. However, I'm also not a fan of people trying to take matters into their own hands, and there's zero consequence for it. AEW feels like it's the Wild West where anything can happen, and there needs to be some kind of control to this chaos, because this is getting out of hand. And if something doesn't happen soon, you can very well guarantee that this company is going to implode from within, and it's going to be very reminiscent of 2001 WCW. So That's all I know for now on the subject. Honestly, I feel like everyone involved made really bad choices. I'm not going to sit here and say that Punk was righteous in everything that he did. I sympathize more with him on a personal level because I feel like this is a guy who literally was getting pushed to his breaking point, and he's sick of dealing with the behind the scenes politics and the clique like nature of the EVPs, which that was my point in the beginning. Like, it's starting to feel like, Shawn Michaels and his little clique buddies back in like mid to late 90s, where they could basically go right into Vince McMahon's ear and say, hey, starve this guy, or hey, we're not working with this guy, or we're going to change the finish because we don't like this guy. I'm not saying that the EVPs are like that, but they are a close-knit group of buddies, and they're sticking out for each other. With that said, if you really are an EVP and hold any kind of stake in any company, the one thing you shouldn't be doing is running your mouth about things that you know absolutely nothing about on social media or to press, or even worse, trying to physically confront the guy you have an issue with rather than seeking some kind of mediation or going to the person who runs the company first. And on Punk's case, no, the answer is not to throw fists. But to end, I will say that during the press conference, he said that if anyone has issue with him, they can take it up with him to his face. And it because, some people have to, dick measure. Apparently, Bobby Fish took offense to that and said, name the place, anytime, anywhere. And of course, and it's just, he's obviously coming to the defense of his buddies and Paige and all them. And he's looking for attention because he's no longer with the company. That was a short-lived little run that he and O'Reilly had, although I believe O'Reilly's injured. Oh my God. And that's what I mean by this company is in trouble. Like, you had the Undisputed Era there, you have the Elite there, you have all this amazing talent, but everyone's about ready to cannibalize themselves. It really is nuts. And for the sake of, like, actual wrestling fans who just want to watch wrestling and who want to enjoy wrestling, it's about time they get their house in order, and it needs to happen soon. So, with all that said, hopefully, it really suck if CM Punk left that company, because they're going to lose a lot of eyes on that product. However, after everything's said and done, I'd almost argue that if it really is that bad there, I think maybe Punk's just better off not being there.